What are early signs of a toxic relationship? When they do something that makes you uncomfortable and they get mad at you for expressing your discomfort, you shouldn't feel so bad about it. Like, wow, I'm sorry, I'm not just the amount of hurt you think I should be in response to the hurtful thing you did. When every argument is your fault and you have to be the one to apologize every time. That was something I really hated, especially as a person who constantly blames myself for stuff that's not my fault. Definitely didn't help that. Same here. My PTSD enabled my ex to use my constant feeling of guilt to consistently make me the asshole, slowly breaking me down. My current partner is still helping me to break that habit. Feeling tense whenever you're around them, and feeling guilty for everything. Jeez, I hated that. Yep. Now the relationship is over, and I went through a period of weeks just feeling so guilty. When you don't feel like you can actually speak about your problems, since they will take it personally or won't bother listening. My family uses what I tell them against me later. Edit. I just woke up, and wow, thank you all so much for your support. It really made me feel better. My twin sister uses the deepest insecurities I have against me when I don't do whatever she says. Nothing is ever their fault and always yours. This reminds me of my ex. After I found out she cheated on me, she tried to explain to me how it was my fault. Because my family didn't like her that much. Because my family had kind of figured out that she was abusive. Needless to say, that was the last straw that finally made me dump her and cut all contact. All taking and no giving. Subtly insulting you for their own pleasure. Money problems and or addiction. The subtle insults. Gentle teasing now and then is fine when it's mutual. But when the jokes are always at one party's expense, especially in front of other people, designed to belittle them, that's a red flag. And when the jokes are about something they know you're struggling with and actively trying to change. An inability to take responsibility for their own actions, especially if you find yourself apologizing to them for being bothered by something they did. This so much. I'm working on repairing the psychological damage from years of having to jump through hoops to prove that it's not selfish/unreasonable/shitty of me to disagree with partners or have my own needs. Turns out always having to beg to have your feelings acknowledged, not even respected, just acknowledged, messes you up a bit. The whole time I thought it was my fault that I wasn't communicating properly or using the right words to explain my point of view. But in reality it was narcissism and selfishness on the other side, and nothing I could have done would have changed that. OMG. What you're describing sounds like it came out of my head. This is exactly what my last major relationship was like, and as much as I wish no one else had to go through that, it's so validating to hear it, not just me who made it through such a toxic relationship. I felt like I could finally breathe after leaving, and I hope you continue to heal too. When they seem to argue with you a lot and make petty things into a huge dispute, it's stuff like this that makes you realize how much of a toxic relationship you're in. Also, when the only time they seem like they're not arguing is when they need/want something from you. I cold viewed this thread a year ago. Lol. There is definitely thousands of these threads with relatively the same responses. Just search it up and scroll a bit if you ever need one of these in the future. Lol. Definitely control. But how to tell that? They will take an overactive interest in your reactions to things. They won't take no for an answer. It might be in a cute way at first, but it still is not taking no for an answer. Insisting you go along with something, no matter how harmless it might seem, or insisting you will enjoy something. Pretty soon, if you let that slide, they will be controlling various things. Where you can go, who you can talk to or see, who you can look at, even. Maybe not saying it outright. Don't go there. Stay home. Why are you looking at them? But acting out if you do things like that and they don't like it. Having a temper tantrum if you aren't exactly the way they think you should be. And of course the trick is, there is no pleasing them. They are always upset about something you did. It isn't only about jealousy but also friendships. Family too. And then if you give in to that, there will be a new level. Bit like a video game. Only not leveling up, leveling down. Into hell. So once they get you to focus solely on them, now you are boring. Or you did this wrong. Did that wrong. If you say anything you talk too much. If you don't talk enough. Or you laugh too much. Or your cooking is bad. You name it. It's wrong. Pretty soon you forget who you are and what makes you happy. Worse, you forget that it matters if you are happy. Abuser will often pour it on too thick with romance and compliments in the beginning. That is another way to control you, and it won't last. No one can keep that up. If someone sweeps you off your feet, remember what comes next is a fall. When they constantly call all their exes crazy. Addendum to this. If they talk about their exes too much period. Especially if it's in a negative way, whether that's calling them crazy or just regular assholes. I don't have an absolute policy on this. Sometimes an especially crazy ex can be a good story worth a laugh. And I haven't got a problem with occasionally sharing war stories. But there's a huge difference between talking occasionally about the crazy/evil ex and talking about all your exes like they are bad. Ideally, not all of your exes are necessarily bad people. It's possible to have a relationship with someone, fail, and not want to be with them again, and still believe that they're a decent person. If someone is older than maybe 25 or so and all of their exes were crazy, that would seem to imply one of two things. 1. All of their exes really were crazy. Ergo they consistently have very poor judgment, low standards, or what have you. 2. Not all of their exes were crazy, but they tend to take a super negative view of people they've dated who might have been okay. Neither of those are good things. I was briefly seriously interested in a coworker who was interested in me too, but I started getting uneasy when she kept mentioning how bad all of the people she'd dated were, especially since she was 36. I'd be a little more forgiving of a 22-year-old saying the same thing, because when you're 22 you're still kind of ducking stupid and immature, but a 36-year-old should have their life together. Sure enough, after flirting hard with me for 2 weeks and telling me one night she was super into me and wanted to bang when quarantine was over, she randomly changed personality totally and stopped talking to me with no explanation. Guess I dodged a bullet there. There's sharing stories about an ex as a method of bringing up what sort of behavior in your past relationships worked or didn't work. That way your new partner will better know what works for you. Then there's vilifying exes as a method of convincing yourself that the relationship problems you faced were 100% the fault of others rather than your own. I don't even mention exes by name, and I'm vague as possible to avoid vilifying them. It's the problem behavior I focus on, and how it affected the relationship. Trying to control you, giving you silent treatment, trying to alienate you from your friends, making you choose between them and your family/career/passion, trying to police your social media, pressuring you into sexual activities. Everything on that list, except the last part, is what my mother did to me. People in controlling relationships often had a controlling parent or other adult authority figure in their earlier life. When you realize that you are spending all your time dealing with their issues and never yours, damn, that hit a nerve. Same here. Felt like a personal attack from my last relationship. The relationship doesn't feel good. This is profoundly what I felt early on in my last relationship. I could feel it in the pit of my stomach. That something was simply off. I brought up this feeling to him numerous times throughout our 6-year relationship, and he countered it by saying things like, everyone feels like this in a relationship. You just have to work to get past it. I was a coward and a fool for agreeing with him each time. Not surprisingly, our relationship was garbage. It turned me into a mean, spiteful person towards him. If it feels wrong, it is wrong. Never ignore that feeling. Very well put. That intuition should be enough, but sadly we ignore it. Lover bombing. Lover bombing is a classic emotional abuse tactic, and the abuser often goes hard into it early in the relationship to get you hooked. Let's say you've been seeing someone for 3 weeks and they surprise you with tickets to an exotic vacation or an expensive gift. They'll also usually profess their affection for you often and kind of exaggerated. Lots of no one else has ever made me feel like this kind of stuff. That way you get attached quickly and form positive perceptions of this person, so that when the abuse starts you A, don't leave because you know they are good underneath it, and B, they can weaponize it against you as a guilt trip. That's not to say every fast-paced relationship is emotionally abusive. Mind you, Every relationship works at its own speed and some are faster than others. But it's a reason to be cautious. Especially if it's an early relationship for you. Abusers tend to favor inexperienced targets. Don't be afraid to say you're not ready for something. Or that it's happening too fast for you to keep up with. In healthy relationships the other person will understand. On a related note, love bombing is also a tactic people use to get others to join cults. I came to say exactly that. I remember my old psychology teacher telling me about it, and it has always stuck with me. When you have to psyche yourself up to before you see them. When you have to map out regular conversations beforehand in your head to prevent an explosion. My friend said he started doing that now with most of his interactions due to PTSD from past relationship. When you have to constantly and carefully police your words and actions to avoid setting them off. Whether it's an anger thing or a drama thing. Whether it's over jealousy/suspicion or neediness or them being critical or whatever. If you have to constantly walk on eggshells because it will make your life stupidly difficult. If you accidentally say or do something wrong that triggers them to respond irrationally, you know you have a problem. I think this is a good thing to pay attention to because it's non-specific to the type of problem. It applies equally to physical, emotional, and psychological abuse, and to those who are just energy sucking due to their own personal issues which may not be abusive at all. When they start isolating you from your friends and wanting to know what you've been doing or where you've been all the time or making you feel bad for not being with them, I feel like it goes both ways. I mean, it would be a sign of a toxic relationship if you started isolating yourself too and making yourself feel bad every time you're not around them. This is actually a super easy way to slip into a really bad bout of codependency. I had really bad codependency issues with my previous girlfriend, and with my new current girlfriend of 7 years. I was doing great working on self-esteem and being not so clingy and codependent up until this whole pandemic. It sucks to feel like you've regressed, and before I realized, I was already starting to do things I thought I had moved past. Constantly needing attention. Assuming worst case scenario whenever she was busy with covered schoolwork or didn't respond. Currently trying to refocus on myself for a bit and get off her back a little. But I do still feel bad for putting all of that onto her without intending to. Gaslighting. Run fast. It never ends. I assume you don't talk about lamps. My English isn't good, can you explain it? Gaslighting is distorting reality. It is from the play, later a movie, called Gaslight. In the movie, a serial killer marries a naive woman. He romances her and sweeps her off her feet, dazzles her into falling in love with him. But the real reason he wants to marry her is, he found out there are jewels hidden in the attic of her house. So they marry, he moves in, and at night he turns the gas lamps down low so he can search in the attic. I forgot why the lamps matter, but it's where the play got its name. But in order to not be caught, he begins to convince his wife and everyone else that she is crazy. So he tells her she didn't see the gas lamps lower. He tells her no, there was no letter in the desk. You stole that brooch, don't you remember? That's why it's there. Little things to distort her reality until she feels she is going mad. Of course she isn't insane at all. He's lying to her. So in everyday life it could be, of course I'm not seeing her. She is a friend. Of course you didn't see us kissing. You're crazy. Of course you didn't hear me calling her at night. You were dreaming. It's bigger than lying, because it's making the person distrust their own senses. In addition to many of the more obvious ones here. 1. Not apologizing and not taking responsibility for their actions. 2. Always constructing a narrative that absolves them of responsibility in any issue. Both of these indicate an unwillingness to admit fault in any way that bruises their ego. On a small level, it's not sorry I made us late because I lost track of time. It's well, you should have called me to make sure I had eaten before we got close to the time to leave, and why does the extra half hour matter anyway? In my experience this eventually turned into every issue, big or small, being 100% my fault no matter what, plus a dramatic rewriting of history to save her ego after the fact. My ex would sometimes dramatically and theatrically apologize over something. It's a way to see how far they can go, to test what they could get away with. She would explode at me over something I said, completely take me down. dehumanize me. But when she noticed I resisted and left to work without giving her a goodbye kiss, she would send me these exaggerated text messages to apologize. To quote myself, and I'm sure many others, when it's good it's the best ever, when it's bad I want to die. A lot of people have that sentiment in bad relationships. What they don't realize is that the good was never as good as they thought it was. It just seemed that way because the bad was so bad. Also, toxic partners often bank on you clinging onto the good days so you don't leave them when they put you through hell. This hit home. I always used to semi-quote that one nursery rhyme. When it was good it was very, very good. When it was bad, it was horrid. So I guess this is common for all of us. You are having a conversation and all of a sudden they take offense at some misperceived slight. Then they blow it up out of nowhere. Then go on and on and on until you are in a fight and now you are defending yourself for some non-existent bullshit. You are giving me PTSD from last night's argument. Happens this way every time. Ment fuckery at its finest and so exhausting. Running hot and cold. 1 minute being all love-a-dove, then being cold and distant. Massive red flag. Asking questions about previous relationships in seemingly good faith. Then throwing that information back in your face later on. Constantly questioning you about your whereabouts. And implying that you've been up to no good when you've been hanging out with friends or even family. Not really complimenting you, unless it's masked in a criticism or insult. Sabotaging your relationships by starting fights or calling your friends a bad influence. Basically, when you have a partner who you can't trust to have your back or best interests in hard times, then it's time for you to move on. Period. Don't wait for them to change. They won't. These are all good signs, but the second one you listed is a big one that's often overlooked. My ex would ask me questions about my previous relationships often. At first I thought it was because he was just curious and wanted to be sure he didn't repeat their mistakes. But I started noticing he was devoid of any real sense of caring when he would ask. And it was as if he was studying me and my replies more than he was actually listening. Later on he would throw all of that stuff back in my face to make me feel bad when he didn't get his way. He was a cheater and a very, very dangerous person. If it feels like they're asking these questions with no emotion or feeling attached, that is a major red flag of a toxic person. Unhealthy power dynamics forming. Can you expand on this PLS? Like when one person has complete control and power, where the other is unable to speak their mind or communicate. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.